continue waiting. And so we've seen we have been managing time very poorly. It was supposed to be a 5 minutes break, which turned into a 25 minutes break, but it's still okay. But we have brought someone now all the way from Accra, Mr. Bright Safer. So Bright the bouncer. So if you're not respecting time, so he will assist us in that one. So I kindly now again introduce our panel and our various speakers. So first we have, if you look at the program, it's Miss Anika Altaf, but it's Dr. Anika Altaf. My colleague Patrick, while he was, doing the program, he was drinking too much water, so he diluted the title. So Dr. Anika Altaf, Executive Director, Include Knowledge Platform, which is hosted by Leiden University, joining us on stage. Dr. Solomon is not amongst us today. We have Dr. Monono Eyole, the Chair for Political Affairs of ECOSOC, so he's also joining us on this panel of AI. I've not seen Saba Tiku. She's here. Oh, sorry. Yesterday we didn't see you. So, but welcome, Saba. So, Saba Tiku Beyene, independent AI researcher and AI policy fellow. I'm sure the moderator will introduce later on. And with a round of applause, allow us to invite Ms. Dangan Abra, the moderator for the session. So, Dabra is the Associate Director Advocacy for Policy and Innovation API. I'm just trying to go very, very quickly on that one, and just to also inform you, you will have less than 1 hour for this panel, so try to be as concise as possible. We'll do some quick housekeeping. We were supposed to break for lunch after, it's almost time when this panel will be over. That will be almost lunchtime. So we'll go for lunch and we'll reconvene at 2:20. So the next panel, which is the panel on reparative justice, will continue after lunch. But again, we kindly make an appeal to you. At least just grab something quick for lunch and we come here on time so that we have, the panel 5, and then we also have to endorse the outcome document, have the closing, so that you don't spend your whole Saturday here. So that's my appeal. So over to you now, Madam Moderator, for your session.
Thank you so much, Raj. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. This panel is on AI governance, digital sovereignty, and Africa's digital public. Yesterday when we were setting the scene during the plenary, the moderator, Richard, actually highlighted that all these are big words, And truly, when you talk about AI governance, digital sovereignty, and Africa's digital public, they refer to different concepts, actually, and sometimes conversations on these concepts are had in silos. However, there is an interconnectedness, especially within the African context. It is interlinked. They are not separate conversations. And that's what we're trying to explore in this session today. We underscored in the scene setting session yesterday that much of the AI technology used on the continent is not really owned by us. And this shows up in a number of ways. And it manifests in areas related to data, which may border on data sovereignty. Of course, we know we can also develop mechanisms that relate to digital public infrastructure if we don't build adequate AI governance frameworks and structures. So all of these are intertwined, and we hope to explore and go deeper into this. But one overarching question we are seeking to answer is, how can Africa participate in the rulemaking process and not just be bystander and abide by rules that are made for them elsewhere? As highlighted by Raj, of course, as you can see here as well, we have 3 panelists who will be helping us dig deeper and explore into these core issues. First, we have Anika, the Executive Director at Include Knowledge Platform, hosted by African Studies Center, Leiden. And I guess we will begin with you, Anika. Yesterday there were conversations around the just transition, and climate justice. Another session also highlighted that there was an infrastructure gap that African negotiators have or encounter during climate negotiations or climate discussions, especially at COP. Do you see any pattern, that runs across, especially with relation to the infrastructure gap, and bringing this down now to Africa's digital and AI governance space? Do you think there are commonalities that can be drawn? Please, what do you think about that?
Thank you, Abrar, for that question. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, great. Everyone is awake. Yeah, well, I definitely see some interconnections, and maybe also looking back, reflecting on yesterday and today, there seems to be a red thread that I've at least noticed. And it seems to be that we're talking a lot about injustice, and rightfully so, as one of the root causes. And then as one of the solutions, we very much talk about the continental alignment, speaking with one voice, making one fist to tackle that injustice. And then all of the, well, let's say wicked problems that we're discussing, we see that we're not going to solve those from today to tomorrow. So it's really about transitions. So having kind of seen that red thread, and I was also thinking about the conversation of today, that's also going to be my red thread. And I'd like to give a little bit of context for those who are not familiar with this space, just to bring you through what the situation is currently at the continent. So less than 1% of global data center capacity is currently in Africa, less than 1%. And of that, 40% is in South Africa. So that's quite striking. And obviously, the continent has an increasing need for these data center capacities. If you look a bit further and look at a compounding factor, then that would be data routing. So an estimated 80% of intracontinental internet traffic is currently routed through European servers. So this obviously creates a lot of problems, whether it's latency or higher costs. But the one I'd like to focus on, and which brings us back to that injustice infrastructure, is dependencies. Because control over data infrastructure, not just connectivity, is becoming the new frontier of sovereignty. What you see is that countries are building infrastructure, they're generating data and adopting systems, but they do not fully control those systems and the models, and they don't govern those systems. So relying on foreign supplied cloud platforms and proprietary models presents strategic concerns. AI is becoming more and more central to national economic strategy. So we really need to take this into account. And these dependencies raise all kinds of questions, not just about cost and access, but also about the contextual fit for the continent, long-term resilience, and economic autonomy. Maybe to put it in more simpler terms, if you look at innovation, you see that high income level countries are much more suited to benefit from AI. Whereas if you look at low income countries, you see that they're often still struggling with basic electricity, broadband, and foundational digital infrastructure. Now, this is sometimes also called data colonialism, where a handful of corporations, mostly from the US, but more and more so from China, are controlling the infrastructure of the digital economy. So they're extracting data from Africa without fair returns. This creates new forms of asymmetric dependencies on foreign technology and foreign technology providers. The challenge here is that building these capacities is resource intensive and it's slow. So what's the way forward? I think there are a couple of scenarios and a couple of pathways that we can think about. The first one would be integration into existing systems as they are currently designed. This path would offer speed. It would offer access to global technology and compatibility with dominant platforms. The downside, obviously, is that it creates dependencies, value extraction, and limited policy leverage. So countries that adopt AI systems embedded in foreign infrastructure, that are trained on foreign data, that are governed by foreign standards, and that are subject to corporate decisions, they're participating in the digital systems, but they are not shaping it. So there's a second pathway. That would be one of full independence. That's not a very realistic option. And not just for low-income countries, but there are a few countries who could really have a fully independent AI ecosystem. So obviously, we need a third way. And that would be designing digital public infrastructure from the ground up with sovereignty safeguards. So building domestic AI capabilities and data governance, and coordinate regionally, that's a very important one, to create collective bargaining power and asserting positions in global standard setting bodies. So that continental alignment is really, really important and needs to be focused on instead of focusing on individual country capacity. So what we need is neither passive dependence nor isolationism. We need a deliberate third way to reduce dependencies. African countries should bargain collectively and treat core AI enablers such as compute and data foundational models, and they should really treat them as regional public goods. And then I will close, and I hope that this is also something you will remember and take away. Sovereignty is no longer just negotiated at the borders. It is very much and more negotiated within digital systems. And I'll stop there, Abra.
Thank you, Annika. In fact, Thank you, Annika. You highlighted some quite jarring statistics. 1% of the global data center capacity is in Africa. That's quite jarring. And there's something that you highlighted, when you were trying to aggregate or highlight the solutions. You said it's important to coordinate regionally, right, to build bargaining power so that the dependence is not passive. And that brings me to Dr. Ayole. Dr. Ayole, we're having a conversation earlier where you highlighted that some of the work that you do relates around the consideration of an African legislation, especially as it relates to the AI conversation. And, when you spoke about that, it crossed my mind that we have the AU strategy as well, So I was wondering, that's the AI strategy. So I was wondering, why is this conversation or this proposition that you highlighted, why is it relevant?
Oh.
I guess we can go on. If you can you hear me?
Welcome.
Can you hear me? Yes, I guess we can go on. So yes, Dr. Ayole, I was saying that why is this conversation, relevant? Why is this important? Maybe building, and that's just following up from what she said. Yes.
Thank you very much. I think this is very important because the first thing we have to recognize is that at the level of the African continent, we do have the African Convention on Cybersecurity and the Protection of Personal Data, which is commonly known as the Malabo Convention. And so this convention solely was trying to see how to harmonize legislation within the areas of cybersecurity and to see how member states can engage into all of this. And more particularly to see how they can work within the context of violation of personal rights in terms of data collection, processing, and even storage. One of the key things that we have to understand is that when we look at the aspect of the continent, we've seen, and I think this was highlighted yesterday, we've seen that the use of AI, not only AI, but the cyberspace when it comes to peace and security is very much highlighted. And that is why the Peace and Security Department at the level of the African Union came up with the AI strategy, which that too also has its own limitation because it cannot guarantee our AI governance and even digital sovereignty at the level of the continent. And so why is this important? Because when this convention was adopted in Malabo in 2014, it did not preempt, or there was no anticipation of the rise of AI that we see today. And so this was post or pre-AI period that this conversation around the Malabo Convention was taking place. And also, there's also the aspect, just like how Dr. Anita raised, the infrastructural paradox that we have within the continent, where we see that no matter how we use, if we have less than 1% of the data center, that too is also a very important aspect when we want to talk about digital sovereignty. You cannot say you're talking about sovereignty when you cannot protect your own data that you develop. So that is why it's very important for us to reflect we have to reflect on moving past the Malabo Convention and even the AU Continental AI strategy that has been developed by the African Union Peace and Security Council. And so with this slide, it is why is it important for us to have this conversation? Because one, if we are talking about building or guaranteeing AI governance, we have to look at the legislation first. In Europe, they have, because we have to start looking at the aspect of risks, at what level of risks do we have to go? And one of the examples is the AI Act that the European Union has developed. And so it is important for us to, first of all, see how we can enact binding, be it domestic or even the continental legislation. We already have a convention. And I believe within the framework of the AU and legal, we can move with a protocol, which is more like a supplementary to the already existing Malabo protocol, to Malabo Convention, to see how to bring in the aspect of AI and how we can move towards this slide. The second option is for us to look at the aspect of a model law, which is more of a softer law, working through maybe the Pan-African Parliament to see how we can come up with a model law which guides the framework of AI within the continent. And so the aspect of codifying and even our trade protocols are also very key elements that we have to look into it and go above the aspect of also harmonizing cross-border cloud. Because when you're talking about AI or the internet age, it goes beyond borders. And so these are some of the reflections that maybe even at the level of AU ECOSOC, we are trying to see how to engage civil society organizations so that we can take this conversation past the Malabo Convention. Yes, we work a lot to see how to popularize the convention, but how can we move beyond and seeing the limitation and seeing the challenges and seeing the trends of AI today? We have to engage civil society to discuss on posts and what measures we can take in order to, especially within the African continent, for legislation so as to guide the moving train of AI.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ayole. So I have a follow-up question, and I wonder what your thoughts are on this. Still drawing from something Dr. Anika mentioned, right? And you've actually set the scene, you've highlighted the relevance for a regional-wide legislation. However, or maybe not however, also considering, we know that nationally, there are several AI strategies, several AI policies that a lot of countries across the continent are putting out. And most of the time, these strategies seek to align with national agendas. And Dr. Anika mentioned something. She said it's important, especially within the conversation of DPI, to treat it as regional public goods. So I wonder what your thoughts are. How do we also ensure that there is that buy-in that can aggregate the different national positions, to come together and work on a regional position as you have proposed?
why is it important? Because the threat of AI or the use of AI goes beyond borders. And so if we want to treat it more in a level of national, it means our strategy will be limited and it will not be as effective as it ought to be. Because when we look at some of these things with the internet age, it crosses borders. And so if we don't look at it at the level of be it the regional or at the continental level, we are going to be shooting ourselves in the leg, and it's going to be very difficult for us to be effective. Because we see today, even in terms of, maybe I should bring it at the level of peace, security, and conflict, be it even our electoral system is also under threat in the aspect of AI and all of this. And some of these things do not respect borders, and they don't respect national sovereignty. And so it becomes critical for us to have this conversation at the continental level and see how we can harmonize. Because one of the key aspects too is if we don't harmonize our legislation, it means it will be difficult for even to take legal actions if someone who is in another country is being arrested for a crime in aspect of extradition and all of that. It becomes very difficult, and I think the legal people in the House will agree, the Pan-African Lawyers Association. So all of these aspects needs to be contained if we look at either a regional or a continental level. It means a crime committed against Cameroon or Nigeria in Chad or wherever can still be, there's still a legal mechanism for that person to be pursued and brought to book.
Thank you so much. In fact, in your submission, it brought to my memory something that a panelist from one of yesterday's session highlighted when he said that the technology affects everybody, and so all hands need to be on deck. And this brings me to Saba. So Saba, there was something that was earlier mentioned, the earlier submission, a lot of the statistics that were highlighted earlier paint a bleak picture. They highlight that there are gaps within Africa. So it appears as though Africa is running behind. But I wonder, is this the case all around? You track AI across the globe. Would you say that Africa is ahead in some aspects? Or if that is the case, where is Africa ahead? Or where are we behind? Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abra, for that question. I think this is one of the most important questions we can ask, because the global conversation often starts with the assumption that Africa, we are just simply catching up with the world or with the AI technology race. But I don't think that is the right way to look at. And one thing that really stuck with me, and this is following the discussion from the Geneva Digital Week, there was an AI for Good Summit at the UN Global Dialogue on AI, as well as WSIS plus 20 high-level events. And now here in Addis, right? And everyone is talking about AI governance, but not at the same level. In many global forums, the conversation starts with the compute, the power of the compute, and with the frontier AI models. But in Africa, I think our starting point is we ask, how can AI support development? How can AI improve public service? How can AI create jobs while at the same time protecting rights, right? And I think that's a different perspective that we see as Africa's strengths. So coming back to your question, where Africa is ahead, I see three relevant areas that I see where Africa is ahead, but I'm not saying this is necessarily in terms of technology, but in a governance thinking. The first one is we are already taking the people-centered approach. What I mean by this, the conversation is rarely about building the most powerful AI systems or the most powerful AI compute in the world. It's about asking whether AI helps to solve real challenges. Can it improve healthcare? Can it improve education? Can it improve agriculture, crop productions, yields, and so on? And that's also very much reflected in the African Union continental AI strategy. which places development, which places inclusion, as well as human dignity at its center. And the second reason why I say Africa is ahead is because Africa is thinking collectively. And why I say this, many parts of the world, they have begun with developing their national AI strategies, and now they're trying to coordinate across borders. And we as Africans, we already have the advantage because we already have the continental framework which can serve as a base for that, which encourages cooperation. And so we're not starting from zero, but we are starting from a shared mind of shared principles. And third one is, I don't think we say this enough, but we have a vibrant young people and civil society communities as well working on AI governance. And I'm saying this because I'm also a young person. And across the continent, there are young innovators, there are young researchers already not waiting to be part of the conversation, or already not waiting to be invited to be part of that conversation. At the same time, they are contributing to policy discussion, they are contributing to policy consultations, say it at the global level or at the regional level, and also conducting researches, and at the same time asking those difficult questions such as accountability, responsibility. And that's something that we should see as strengths. But being ahead in vision, that is not the same thing as being ahead in implementation. So this brings me to the second thought, which is, where is Africa lagging behind, or where is Africa behind? And I think this is one of the very important points that we need to be very honest. We are not behind because we lack ideas. We are behind because our implementation capacity has not caught up with our ambitions. Let me give 3 examples, for instance. The first one is infrastructure. AI depends on reliable electricity. It depends on data centers, as my colleagues have already spoken about. And also depends on connectivity and cloud services, data infrastructure, and very importantly about the compute capacity, which is the main one. And those investments are actually growing in Africa, and that's very encouraging, but still there's a gap. And the second one is institutional capacity. And AI governance, it doesn't happen because a country has its own national AI strategies. I know it's very important to have a national AI strategy, and currently we have around 18 AI strategies across Africa, and also AI policies coming up, and different kinds of frameworks as well at the national level related to data governance and so on. So it doesn't happen, AI governance actually doesn't happen automatically because we have the national AI strategies, but it does happen when regulators understand those AI systems, and when procurement officers also know what kind of questions to ask before buying those AI tools into their country. And third one, I think, is the implementation inside organizations. This is speaking about the lagging behind. And this is something also I have seen through my work as a part of the AI Ethics Fellowship at Code for Africa. And many organizations said, whether civil society, private sector, government, are already using generative AI or the LLM models, right? This is in their daily work. But very few have their own internal governance frameworks or internal policies on how to use those Gen AI systems in a good way. Questions like, when should staff use AI? How do we protect confidential information from being fed into that LLM model? And who is accountable if AI-generated output causes harm? I think those policies, they often don't exist. And to me, that's kind of like a broader challenge. It tells us that AI adoption is actually moving faster than AI governance. So if I had to summarize, my point is that Of course, we are ahead in recognizing that AI is fundamentally development issues as well as a government issues. But we are behind in building the institutions that turn those principles into practice. And that's where I think the next phase of African leadership lies. At the end, we should aim to, build those AI ecosystems, and especially those building blocks for the AI ecosystem that can really reflect our aspirations, that can reflect our priorities and realities at the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we giving her a round of applause? Thank you so much, Saba. And something you said that I've just jotted down as what I would call quotable quote is that we are behind because our implementation capacity has not caught up with our ambition. Right, I'm coming back to you now, Dr. Anika. So assuming that this gap is eventually closed, let's say that our implementation capacity eventually catches up with the ambition, right? What would inclusive digital public infrastructure now look like in practice?
A very good question. I think there are already a couple of examples where we're trying to make it inclusive. If you look at digital payments, digital ID systems, there's the example of the MISA platform in South Africa, which is like a single digital door for government services, and it's built on identity, payments, and data exchange. And it really tries to safeguard privacy, but also inclusion. So the system is built in a way that it's accessible for people that are less digitally literate. It really tries to reach out to rural and remote communities. It has social protection. So I think there are already examples that really take that contextual fit that's really important for the continent into account that we can learn from. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but get inspired by those initiatives that are really working from the ground up and having that inclusive approach.
Okay. I'll be coming back to you, Dr. Ayole, because when Anika was speaking, around DPI and all of that, it crossed my mind that governance framework is really important. There are also considerations around access to data and all of that. Guardrails are relevant. So from your perspective, do you want to share some perspectives or insights on what the ECOSOC's position might be, what the ECOSOC's perspective might be when it comes to this position of AI governance and digital sovereignty?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll try to give this in maybe 3 thematic dimensions on or pillars when it comes to AU ECOSOC's intervention in AI engagement. The first thing is civil society capacity building. And I think this was highlighted already with our partnership with the Cambridge University. And this is more to see how to capacitate our civil society on the use of AI and how they can go about the aspect of AI. And so this partnership is moving. We've already started with the training in Nairobi in Kenya, and we're expanding this offer to other countries and civil society organizations. The second is more on the aspect of thematic forums, just like we have here in this forum, the AU ECOSOC Citizens Forum. I think it has become a platform for this kind of conversations that we need to bring in to discuss on AI governance, the aspect of infrastructure and even sovereignty at a high level, and where we believe that bringing civil society organization and those who are engaged in the aspect of AI in the continent can reflects on how best we can advise the African Union, the policy making decision body on this aspect of AI. And lastly, it's the aspect of global policy alignment. And all of this comes with the aspect of us trying to champion a kind of an inclusive, democratic AI policy where it protects human rights, it counter misinformation, and also with the aspect of trying to amplify Africans' priorities on the international stage. I believe when I was talking about the Malabo Convention here, if I could ask how many of us knew of that convention, which is like a kind of a benchmark within the African Union on cybersecurity or what we are discussing, many of us wouldn't have. So that is our role, is to see how to amplify this and also different African Union strategies and mechanisms on the international scene, and trying to see how people can appropriate this mechanism and see where we can make it better. So that is the three levels in which AU ECOSOC at this moment is engaging within this AI conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ayole. I think now we'll cede the floor for questions, the last few minutes of this session for questions. But before we do that, I would also like to get the perspective of members of this audience as well. You know, and maybe I'll be taking us a step back. So if you were in yesterday's session, recall there was a panel session that was about a presentation that highlighted the infrastructure deficit in Africa, especially as it relates to energy poverty, you know, and power gaps. I think Dr. Anika also highlighted some of them. I think if I remember correctly, the presenter highlighted that in terms of energy poverty, we have over 1 billion Africans that are energy poor. I think he also highlighted that about 600 million Africans do not have power to access to electricity. So I wonder what your thoughts would be. This conversation around digital sovereignty, AI governance, and all of that, what do you think about us having this conversation when we have major infrastructure gaps that still need to be plugged? You know, we're talking about access to AI when there is still power deficit and there's no access to power, basic power, you know. So is it something that we should take a step back and look at, or is it a zero-sum choice? Do we have to choose, you know, between handling or solving one problem or the other? Is it either or? I wonder what your thoughts are. But then I'm ceding the floor now to further questions, and I can see hands already. So I will begin from my right-hand side only because I noticed that he had his hand up first. So let's begin with you, and then we'll move from, yes, okay, so let's take him first. Please kindly pass the mic to the gentleman in the corner. Anyone to help us with the mic, please? Okay, is he good? Okay, is he going? Thank you.
It's good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The AI topic or AI field is one of the emerging fields currently invading the world. So it is also paving a way in order to implement further for the IoT, Internet of Things technology, to develop smart cities, smart hospitals, education, and manufacturing. So it's an input for that. And discussing about the AI governance, the policies, the frameworks. Also discussing about the data governance, particularly orienting on the data science also. What my question is, when the AI governance policies or frameworks developed, what was the role of the diaspora communities? Those are scholars, scientists. But I know several Africans, they are engaging in industries, particularly those industries developing AI technologies. So what is the role of diasporas, so scholars and scientists and professionals in developing the AI governance frameworks or policies? Thank you.
Thank you. I think the gentleman in that corner, yes. Okay.
No, thank you very much to the panelists. This is a very topical discussion. Not because I do lead most of our digital health programs in Nigeria and also a couple of other countries. So the discussion around AI governance especially is extremely critical. And it's even more so when you look at it within the health system. We're just doing some mapping of AI tools in Nigeria, and we found that there are already 30 different AI tools already either being implemented or already being scaled across different use cases, ranging from even clinical decision support, etc. And I don't need to tell you what the utmost risk of not having a very clear governance or regulatory framework means, isn't it? So my take is that the fundamental priority is to think about that regulatory and governance framework in a way that works for the continent, but also for specific country contexts. But we cannot, like, this is something we need to do like yesterday. The innovation is not waiting. Like, innovation is kind of really, really rapid, right? Because the private sector is really incentivized to continue to be innovative and throwing out tools outside. But if the system is not ready to govern or regulate, that is a fundamental problem. Second point is that I think to the moderator's question, we have to answer those two questions or solve those two critical problems concurrently. As we are setting up regulation and governance systems, we also need to solve the infrastructure problem, isn't it? And solving infrastructure problem, that's, in my opinion, where the citizens sort of come in, right? How do we demand basic infrastructure from our government, but also from the development financiers in a way that is sustainable and aligns with our priorities as a continent? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have this table.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Marceline from DRC, and my own is more a suggestion on AI adoption. In my latest publication on AI adoption, entitled From Social Drivers to AI Usage and Dependency, the findings show that people are becoming more and more dependent to AI tools. And our government, even if it's not for example, if it's not the minister, maybe the assistant of the minister is using AI. And one advantage or opportunity that comes with AI is personalization of answers. And when we are talking about personalization of answers, that means AI use our data, our personal data, to give us a personalized answer. So my suggestion is, while developing the framework, we need to look onto this, our data, how our data is used. In America, the government of America, they are using Claude as their AI tools, and I believe they have regulations and terms with Claude. And I don't know if in other countries, but I believe that we don't have contracts with, for example, ChatGPT, but our government or our authorities are using these technologies, and they are providing secret or data to these tools, and we don't know how these data are used. So my suggestion is, while sitting together to develop the regulations, we need to have also contract with these providers of AI tools. Thank you.
We have room for just about 4 more questions. So I think he has had his hand up for a while. The gentleman man wearing blue at the back, yes. So please, let's just.
Thank you. I will have one question for Ms. Saba. I think you have argued or you claim that Africa is leading in AI governance. And if you remember, we have witnessed such a controversy where countries have taken very different positions regarding data sovereignty. If you remember, Ethiopia entered on health cooperation framework with the United States of America that has raised very grievances and questions regarding about the access to health data. And while we have witnessed Kenya has a legal and public grievances over those data sovereignty. So your claim is Africa is leading in AI governance. What are the evidences to claim such as Africa is actually ahead in AI governance? Thank you.
Okay. I think, yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Burkum Kulu, and I am a political science student at Addis Ababa University. I want to put a remark on data sovereignty. So I made a little research. So you might already know it, but I should state it, I guess. So Africa has the only 200 to 300 data centers, and which is almost equal to Japan's scale. Like imagine like one country have better and more number of data centers than the whole continent of Africa. So the other thing is that 60 to 80% of the government data is stored outside of Africa, outside of the continent. So far as I know, South Africa is the only country that has a large share of the government data that is hosted domestically. The allegations surrounding the African Union HQ, like there was an allegation that the data were being sent to the China, even though whether it is ultimately substantiated or not, but it should serve as a wake-up call for all of us as South Africans. And besides, with over 18% of the continent's data being like hosted and processed and stored outside of the continent, Africa is exporting its data along with its economic intelligence and innovation values. The other thing is, as we know, data is the new strategic resource. It is the new oil of everyone hunting for. And we can see that the US, the Russian Federation, and the Chinese governments, how they treat the data. They protect their data by any means. They are also competing for access to global data, right? So what I want to remark, or what I want to stress on, is that the question of data sovereignty and intelligence for Africa is not just an option. It is mandatory issue that needs an immediate action. Africa should process, store, host its own data. It should own its own data, and it should govern its own data. Thank you.
Sadly, we have room for just 2 more questions. So we'll take you, and there's a lady at the back wearing the white and black sweater. So him and her. No, just 2. Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Rohama Mulgeta, and I am a student at Addis Ababa University. My question is, currently you mentioned that AU is focusing on civic society capacity and thematic forums and global policy alignments. So how can we ensure that this effort reaches grassroots community and young peoples who are most affected by AI-related opportunities and risks? Thank you.
Okay, and then we have, yeah,
Thank you, Abra. I'm just intervening because you mentioned the statistics I gave yesterday. All right, so let me push the stats a bit further. Do you know that Africa is powering the AI industry worldwide? Yes or no? No. Copper, cobalt, manganese, lithium, everything is coming from Africa. Just cobalt, 70+% is coming from the Copper Belt, Zambia, DRC, etc. Earlier, I think Dr. JD was talking about regionalization and how we can build our own sovereignty, let's say economic-wise. Without pushing too much, I'm just going to say, if we have those natural resources here, why can't we build world's data centers in or across the continent itself? Why should these be leaving the continent to be built in the US and elsewhere? Do you know what we use in chips? There are fights at the level, at global level, when it comes to NVIDIA and what we call the mangoes, okay? Do check what mangoes mean, not necessarily the sweet fruit. So basically, the point is simple. Same like energy deficit. We have here a strategic deficit on how we can build up on our own natural resources to build our own AI industry for the continent. This is point one. And just to conclude, when it comes to health, it is being mentioned. Agriculture, it was mentioned earlier. Just, I think in the first panel, we were talking about data. And yesterday also we were talking about data. Who owns data? But we are using AI today to collect data, be it when it comes to deforestation, when it comes to, I would say, displacement, when it comes to water mapping. For example, I'm working on that project across the continent on water mapping, all right? And I'm using AI for that, all right? So basically, if we know our problem is data collection and we talk about data sovereignty, and we know that AI is one of the best tools today that can enable us to achieve that. So I believe that we are extremely late, but we need to jump on that train now and take a step forward to build it for our own interests. And that it's not ideological, but it's not something where Africa needs to run behind the world, the rest of the world. I think that the reverse is possible when it comes to the AI move forward. So be it OpenAI, we can bring them to Africa. Be it Anthropic, we can bring them to Africa, and so on and so forth. So I just want to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's quite apparent that this conversation is indeed loaded. You know, you have mentioned the issue of the natural resources being taken away from Africa to build infrastructure elsewhere. There were conversations or questions around the roles of the diaspora community. Somebody mentioned the role of AI governance, which is critical in health systems. Somebody mentioned AI dependency, which made me remember a conversation I was having with someone yesterday, where he mentioned the example of a certain African country that was developing an AI policy that was written, ironically, with AI, you know? So, in fact, there are layers and layers and layers to this. But just so that we can close, I would now cede the floor to my panelists to just in 1 minute, or maybe 1 hour, 30 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, try to respond to some of the questions and give their closing summaries. So I'll begin with Dr. Ayoli.
Thank you very much. I want to start with the question from the student from Addis Ababa University about AU ECOSOC in terms of our engagement with civil society organizations in the capacity building. We know that when we train civil society organizations that are grassroots, they take it to their communities. But however, when you're speaking, I think I just had a reflection, and I think maybe the head of program is here, and even Ambassador William. Maybe we can push this reflection to have maybe online courses, certification courses that will reach a wider people who can take it to have a better understanding about AI. So I think maybe we can take the conversation and our reflection with Cambridge or any other partner towards the level of maybe developing some online courses on this to capacitate more persons on this. So I think that is excellent. I think my last thing, I'll just maybe what I wanted to say is looking at if we look at the risk threshold and the importance for regulation, I'll tell that my brother Vinish said it all about why can't we put our resources together, because building these data centers are very expensive and they take a lot of energy, water. If we see that there are issues of even areas not wanting data centers to be built because it also affects maybe the water supply and other things. I think it's only by coming together, be it at the regional level or REX, for us to see how we can start working together, putting our resources to build this data center so that our data can be stored here in the continent.
Saba.
Thank you for all those questions. Let me start from the positive side. So over the past years, we have seen so many developments around those global AI frameworks, regional frameworks as well. And I was speaking about the African Continental AI Strategy. There is also the African Union Data Policy Framework, and so many policies and strategies as well at the national level. And we do have a vibrant startup ecosystem, innovation ecosystem as well. I think that's what we need to have in mind. And that actually tells us that we are not starting from the ground, or we're not starting from zero. But the challenge is implementation, and I've said it earlier. And one of the person also asked about why I say Africa is ahead of when it comes to AI governance frameworks or AI governance discussion. My point was that Africa is ahead in how it's framing the AI governance discussions. But as you said, the health data is one of the most sensitive one, and it requires high quality. And also from the implementation side, still we lag behind in so many. We don't have the governance frameworks, but at the same time we lag behind in implementing those principles into actions. And so, how do we ensure that AI is deployed responsibly? In all sectors, not only in health sectors. Of course, the health one is very, very important. How do we deploy AI responsibly, like in education systems? How do we deploy AI in our businesses and so on? For me, coming back to even the digital sovereignty discussion, digital sovereignty is not only about infrastructure, but it's about being included in the discussions about data governance. It's not also isolation, but at the same time, building the capacity in order to make an informed discussions on our terms, and to also engage with the global community with confidence, and to ensure that actually AI serves our priorities, our realities at the ground. And so, I hope the next chapter would not be catching up as I have started my conversation. I hope we will be contributing to the global discussions when it comes to governance frameworks, but also contributing the innovation and demonstrate that development, human rights, and governance model can go at the same time, but not in isolation. Thank you.
Monica.
Thank you, Abra. I'll reflect on your last question. I don't think it's a and question. I think it's it's a or question. It's an and question. We need to do both. And I'll repeat what I said earlier, that sovereignty is no longer just negotiated at the borders, but very much so and more within digital systems. And whether we like it or not, There's just no way around it. So we're going to have to do both at the same time.
Thank you. And I think in closing, we can just summarize to say that if we were to move from the position of passive dependence, irrespective of the infrastructure gaps that we need to show up simultaneously, as you've said, and as the gentleman in the corner highlighted, we need to coordinate regionally as well, drawing on Dr. Yole's point. It's important to coordinate regionally so that we can build collective bargaining power. So with that, I would say we've come to the end of this session. I want to thank my panelists immensely for being here. And I want to thank you, our audience, for obliging us and asking questions and also listening to us. So thank you. We have come to the end of this session.
Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Before you make your way off the stage, maybe a group photo. Okay, thank you. So as our panelists make their way off the stage, we'd like to take a few moments before lunch just to spotlight some of the work that our amazing partners across the continent are doing in line with ECOSOC's mandate in terms of, enhancing civil society's participation and civic engagement within the work that we do and the world that we operate in. So allow me to invite Ms. Victoria Mania from the Include Knowledge platform to provide a presentation on some of the incredible work that Include does. So Victoria Mania, the floor is yours. Let me look for him. Shared already. Yes.
Hello, everyone. Well, this is the only person responding to me. So hello, everyone. Oh, sorry, Victor responded. I have to be nice. Oh, she responded. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Yes, thank you. Yes, so I'm Victoria Mania from the Include Knowledge platform. And I'll start from a premise. For decades, development cooperation has been built or designed based off what the West thinks Africans either need or Africans want. And for us, we decided it would be interesting to empirically, yes, my co-presenter decided to join us. It would be empirically important to gather perceptions of Africans from different levels on development cooperation. I remember yesterday someone was talking about how we come to this room and we're privileged to be here, but there are certain people at the grassroots, even young people who are, unable, financially cash strapped and unable to travel to conferences like this to reflect on issues that affect them. And so we thought, why don't we gather perceptions at the various levels and meet people where they are? We did an evidence synthesis. I know that my brother over here and those from the Pan-African Law Group have increasingly emphasized the works of Rodney, Moyo Dambisa. This has been reoccurring, over the last 2 days. And we thought it would be important to know what other people have said about this subject in the past. And so we had an evidence synthesis conducted. We also surveyed about 1,523 development workers through the ECOSOC. So for those asking what's the ECOSOC doing to gather voices of Africans and make sure that they're reflected in global discourse. This is one way. The third thing we did was to organize an institutional roundtable. So we invited people into the room, different levels of representation from civil society to even African donors. And lastly, we interviewed former presidents, former vice presidents, certain high-level reps at the AU, and also some commissioners. So you see that we try to be intentional, because what we found is that for social media, the young people say, some of these people do not speak for us. At the roundtable level, some of them say, these other groups do not really capture what we want them to be saying, or they capture it in diplomatic terms. Yes, so perceptions are very important very quickly, because they do three things. They decide who sets the agenda. Asking the question first is a political conversation. Who sets the agenda? Whose knowledge counts as evidence? And who defines the problems first? Perceptions are not also formed at project levels alone. This is what we found. We found three things. One, structural elements interact with the way most Africans that we surveyed perceive development aid and even programs that they are involved in. History also played a role, which was quite interesting. And social media gave us insights into how history helps Africans, young Africans, perceive development cooperation. The third is project level, which makes a minute or has a minute influence on how people see development cooperation. In our evidence synthesis, I'll just talk very quickly about what we found. That historical and systemic factors have a greater influence on perception than individual project experiences. So apartheid was one of the things that kept reoccurring. Colonialism, the role of Shell, those were some of the things that kept reoccurring. Slavery kept reoccurring. We also realized that partnership is evaluated through observable practices rather than rhetorics. So when you type all of those fancy documents, communication really doesn't influence perception, especially for Africans, when it comes to development cooperation. People are beginning to see past the rhetorics, and it's very important to carry that forward. Now, digital narratives, which was the most important for me, they amplify and frame perceptions. We did social listening on TikTok, on X, on Meta, and all of this extend criticism beyond now. They look far back. In fact, in one of the social media posts, the Dutch government had introduced the consulate that was being set up in Nigeria, in Lagos. And someone said, this is very good for you. When you are done with that, why don't we start the conversation about how Shell has destroyed certain parts of Nigeria? The roundtable in Addis was very clear. We asked people in the room, if your grants were not being threatened, what would you really say about donors? Are they equitable? And someone said, no, they are not. Are current partnerships with the Dutch and European Union equitable? The answer was no. But it didn't stop there. Maybe I go to, yes. We did, I told you at the start that there was a survey of 1,500 plus people. And we realized that there's a difference between technical trust and relational trust. That the money will come is something most of the partners trust that the Dutch or the European Union would see to. They trust that the money would come when the European Union says the money will come. But that's not the only thing that matters. They talked about tokenism. They talked about micromanagement. They talked about the fact that trust is only one-sided. Accountability, is only one-sided. And there is a complex relationship of distrust in these engagements. Some of you are taking pictures, we would share, I promise. 5 recommendations very quickly. Say your history out loud. Secondly, move from aid to investment. Thirdly, let African institutions define the problem. Fourth, match timelines with the transformation that is asked for. You come with a project that is 3 months cycle. What can 3 months really do for anybody? Exactly. My sister here, see? She's gangster. Build one connected system. I think someone mentioned that yesterday. Power, money, knowledge, narratives, security, all need to move hand in hand. You cannot tell me that you support the security and peace in Africa, but your investment in education keeps going down significantly. You cannot say one thing and do another and expect us to just watch or clap for you. In my tribe, you say, you cannot beat me and decide how I will cry. We have some other recommendations which we would also share. But the last thing I wanted to talk about, well, second to the last, we said stop for Africans. Stop, redirect, build, and then we get to our destination. A faulty table cannot stand. You have to ensure that you rebuild the table. If you keep doing patchwork, how many of us watched this Botched? The program Botched, for people that do plastic surgery, you know, exactly, yes. So you know what I mean. Some people would do their augmentations on one part of the body and keep augmenting and augmenting until they look like something God did not create. This is what we're doing right now. I would say, just in conclusion, yes, we want to show you what the social media dashboard actually looks like, because we're going to be sharing it. Thank you very much. So very quickly, I wanted to share what we found, and I would like you guys to become choristers with me today. So we found 3 things from X: that Africa needs foreign direct investment, not aid. And aid is a boomerang. Secondly, Meta, that we Africans aid the West to survive. We are the ones actually giving the aid. What Vinesh was talking about is actually absolutely true. All our raw materials go there, all of it, most of it. We have to find a way to renegotiate our situation. Know this and know peace. You are not the ones receiving aid. You are the one giving aid. Fourth, food aid fills a stomach, but doesn't build a nation. This is what young people on TikTok said. And lastly, on Reddit, Asian and Western development donors are 2 phases of the same imperialist coin. Never forget. So I would like you guys to be choristers with me, because the young people on social media told us 3 different things. Grants have asked us to be grateful. Loans have made us debtors. But African equity would make us co-owners. So I'm going to start and you would respond, okay? 1, 2, go. Grants have made us grateful. So I would start and then you say it, because I need it to stick. We have been conditioned to believe that they're doing us a favor. Now we have to recondition our minds with the truth, okay? 1, 2, go. Grants have made us. It has to be louder. Grants have made us. Loans have made us. Good. I'll start again. Grants have made us. Loans have made us. But an African-led equity will make us co-owners. We'll say it one more time and I'll get out of your hair. Grants have made us. Loans have made us. But an African-led equity will make us. Never forget. Thank you.
Colleagues, let's make Victoria happy. A pom-pom. I mean, thankfully, I don't have a dashboard like she did. Neither do I have any presentation. The reason why I stood, one is to really acknowledge how many are of this popular opinion and want to join Victoria's church. You know, where you make sure that at least the people at the back of the room also has some rhyming things to say. So for those for Victoria, let's give her another pom-pom. So I want to thank Victoria, and of course I'm sure you've also seen Anika, who've come here at least twice or so. So please raise your hand, Anika, because you are the boss of Victoria. So whatever she was saying here, you've also given her those remarks. And I stand here really on behalf of ECOSOC as a member of the Brain Trust, because part of this is not a finished product. And this is the reason why we wanted to showcase it here, is that we have been also then asked that, fair enough, these perceptions have been done using, of course, online tools that did some surveys. And so we understand these perceptions. But what shapes those perceptions? Nothing is more important, I think. So fair enough, we understand what's going on. We feel bad, we feel nice, sometimes we feel indifferent. But what informs those perceptions, especially among us as citizens, and that's the work that Include platform and ECOSOC have agreed to do together, to then take it a little further and go and showcase it using some text examples, as has already been told by Victoria. And they've asked some of us, as part of the ECOSOC fraternity, to then go a little deeper and do three things methodologically wise. If we have done a 1,500 sample size, can we also then understand those perceptions at